Okay, we are going to talk the ColdFusion connection, dynamic database access development with Dreamweaver in this next session. Daniel Short is our speaker. He has been at this business since the previous millennium and runs a web development company, Web Shorts Site Design. He's also the lead developer of CartWeaver, an e-commerce shopping cart solution for Dreamweaver. And he's written articles for publications like the legendary Alistapart. If you guys have not gone to alistapart.com, you really should. It's run in part by one of my great buddies, the great Jeffrey Zeldman, as well as the Macromedia Developer Center. And he's done some Dreamweaver-related movie titles for lynda.com. And those of you who are sitting near the front have these cool, he'll tell you about these cool 24-hour lynda.com passes. And is also has contributed to some Dreamweaver titles from new writers, some Dreamweaver books, I should say. So, Daniel, it's all yours.
Thank you. So before we get started, I just want to know how many people of you are already working with ColdFusion? Oh, so we have lots of new people. Awesome. So what we're going to be covering in this session is basically how to develop with ColdFusion inside of Dreamweaver. We do have a lot to cover, and the beginning of the session is basically about how to build your Access database. All these slides are in your presentation book. I'm going to kind of gloss over the Microsoft Access stuff so we can focus more on Dreamweaver and not get hung up on the Microsoft products. So we'll go ahead and jump right into things. That's about me. And what we're going to cover is what to watch for and how to plan building your dynamic site. I'm not just going to throw you right into the ColdFusion code and say, have fun. We're going to go over a little bit about how to kind of plan your avenue of attack. We'll build a simple Access database, or rather I'll walk you through the steps to do that. We won't actually go through the whole process. And then we're going to build a simplified blog. And to show you quickly what we're going to build is this here. And the BYOB means build your own blog, not bring your own beer. So basically we have our little categories here on the side where I can read about rum or training. And we're going to build an entire admin area where you can add authors to your blog, add posts. There we go. Bad aim. Edit your posts, the whole shebang. So we're going to build all of this in the next hour. And then we will move quickly. After we're finished, I'm more than willing to sit down and answer questions. There'll be another session in here, but I'll park it out in the hallway here. And if you want to go over some things or ask questions, please feel free. So first, why you want to do dynamic development. And my biggest reason is maintenance. I don't like making changes to websites once I'm finished with them. I don't like clients calling me saying, can you change so-and-so's name, or can you change the copyright over here? Those kind of things annoy me because I want to be working on new and interesting stuff. I don't want to be constantly maintaining old sites. Interactivity, letting users search your site, find the content that they want. Self-service, so that you can get rid of some of your customer service headaches. And portability. You can add data anytime, anywhere, so long as you can get on a web browser. Versus if you have a static site, you got to have your laptop with you and Dreamweaver or FTP access, and you download files, upload files, all that other kind of mess. If you can build it all online, then you can change it anytime you want. The ability to repurpose your content as XML, RSS feeds, all kinds of fancy new buzzwords. You can output it in HTML or on WAP for a mobile phone, and you have all your content in one spot, and you can shove it out to as many devices as you want. So the first step is design. I like to design my sites before I design my database. And I do that because then I can make sure that I know exactly what I need in the database. The client comes back and says, oh, well, I wanted an employee directory, and they didn't tell me that before I started building my 40-page admin area, so now I have to go back and adjust to add this stuff later. Finish the design first. So I do a detailed mock-up of a static site. So basically I'll build 2 posts up here. This is a little shot of my blog. I've got 2 posts, descriptions. I've got my categories over here on the left. I know where everything's going to go and where all my data is going to be. Then I'll print out the design or take a screenshot of it, and then I'll mark it all up with pen and say, okay, this is going to go here, this is going to go there, this is this database field, that's that database field. Okay, and it's far easier to adjust when the client changes their mind, and believe me, they will. It's easier to adjust a static mock-up than it is to go back and adjust your database or adjust the 4 admin pages that relate to that particular piece of data that you're manipulating. So the first thing we're going to do is pick the fields that we want for our database. And really this is just all about me playing with PowerPoint's drawing tools. So I needed to find an excuse to do this. So basically we have our little blog here, and each of these is a post. So here I have my posts. And posts have particular information associated with them, such as a heading. They have some text or content. They have a date. They have who posted them. And now you can see that I'm not a graphic artist. I'm a programmer. We have the category that that post belongs to. Then over here we have all of our categories and a link to view all the posts. So what kind of information do I need? I need posts, I need authors, I need categories, and I need some specific information about each of those pieces of data that are going to go in my site. So to that end, I can start building tables in my database. So I need to know about authors. What do I need to know about authors? I need to know their name, and that's about it for this application. And I need an ID for them, some unique identifier. And this is called database normalization. In your database, you want to make sure that you have some unique ID that uniquely identifies every single record in your database. And that ID really has nothing to do with the person. For instance, you might be ID number 2, and your ID number 4, and your ID number 675. You know, it's completely unrelated to who you are, but it uniquely identifies you in the database. So my author is going to have an author ID that's going to be just assigned to them. We don't really care what it is. And then I have categories. My categories, I want to know the category name. I want to know whether it's an approved category, whether it's actually going to be displayed on the site or not. And then I'm going to have a category ID. And then finally, I have posts. Posts have an ID. They have a heading. They have a date that they were created. They have an author ID, which points to my author table. So if you're author number 2, then the post table says, okay, author number 2 wrote this. And then I can go to the authors table and find author number 2, and I can see that that's Jim or Jack or Jill or whoever. Now I have a category ID that does the same thing. This points to my categories table and says that this post belongs to this particular category. And this is part of building a relational database. I'm going to give you guys some keywords you can start searching Google for. We're talking about relational databases and normalization, separating out your data into the smallest pieces. And the post content is going to be the little description, you know, I went to bed at 9 p.m. today, whatever you want to blog about, that's going to be the content. And then whether it's approved. And this is what my database looks like. So here I have my posts. This is actually inside Microsoft Access, inside the relationship window. And I'm going to show that to you very quickly. And we're going to get to the good stuff after this. Come on. So this is my Access database file. And you can see I have my 3 tables, authors, categories, and posts. Inside the posts, and I know that this text is kind of small for you guys way back there, I have all of these fields that we had on my PowerPoint slide. I have a date, it's a date time field. I have some content, which is a memo field. I have whether it's approved or not, which is a yes/no field. And then up here, if I click this little button here, that one says relationships. I can define the relationships in between my tables. I can say that this category ID is related to that category ID. And I can tie all this information together. Okay? If you have questions about how this is all put together, please do come see me after the session and I'll walk you through how to set that stuff up. Okay? So there's my database relationships. Now that I have all of that done, I can turn off my drawing tools. There we go. We need to tell ColdFusion about our database. So we have our database created. We have ColdFusion installed. Now we're going to set up a data source, which tells ColdFusion this friendly name of this database belongs to this Access data file, or this SQL server, or this MySQL server, or Oracle, or Sybase, or whatever you're going to be connecting to on the back end. So to create a data source, we're going to log into first the ColdFusion administrator. So if you've installed ColdFusion on your local machine, it's most likely going to be at localhost port 8500 CFIDE administrator. Okay, so you're going to log into your ColdFusion administrator. And I'll show you where you can find that too. In your programs menu, you can find it right there. So you can create a bookmark for it or find it through your Programs menu to get to your ColdFusion administrator. Okay, I'm going to log in with my super secret password, if I can remember it. Oh. There we go. Too many super secret passwords. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse all this. And under Data and Services here, you'll see Data Sources. And Data Sources is where you create your new ColdFusion data sources. So you can see I already have one here called Web Design World. There we go. 2005 Final. That's what I'm using for this little demonstration over here. It's connecting to a database I've already completed and filled with useful information. And if I want to create a new one, we'll create Web Design World. Call this San Fran 2006. The last time I gave this presentation was in Boston, so I have some leftovers. And we're going to use Microsoft Access. You can see all the other databases that ColdFusion supports by default. ColdFusion will work with any database that you have a JDBC driver for. So if you go to Sun's website and you go through the JDBC library, any JDBC driver you can find, you can connect to through here. So we'll choose Access. I'm going to go ahead and copy this so I don't forget what it is. And we'll click Add. And now we just simply browse to our database. So I click Browse Server. And it's going to load a little Java applet here. And I have access to my entire hard drive here. So we'll go to Documents and Settings, Daniel Short, Desktop, Build Your Own Blog, www, Start, and yes, I buried it, Database, and Web Design World Boston. So we're going to click Apply. It drops a little path in here for me. If you know the path, you can just simply type it in there. If you're doing SQL Server or MySQL, you'll have different information, server IP, username, password, catalog, that kind of stuff. So we'll click Submit. And if all is right with the world, it'll come back and say that the data source was updated successfully. If you run into any errors, bad username and password connecting to MySQL or SQL Server, it'll list that up at the top there and tell you what went wrong. Okay, so now we have our database set up, and we can see that right here. Okay, so back to the slides. The next thing we need to do to work with ColdFusion successfully in Dreamweaver is to make sure that we have RDS enabled on the ColdFusion server. If you're developing on a remote host, let's say you're hosting with Crystal Tech and you're developing your site with Crystal Tech, they're not going to give you RDS access. RDS access is basically God access from a remote machine to the ColdFusion server. So what you need to do is set up a local development machine. Macromedia does provide a free developer edition of ColdFusion that will run on your local machine. There's no limitations to it except that it only works for a single IP. And that allows you to do anything you want on your remote machine. And you can use RDS there. So in the ColdFusion administrator, if I go down here to security, I can set an RDS password. And I can just turn this on, use an RDS password for Dreamweaver Max, home site, or the ColdFusion report builder. And then I specify the password that I want. And I've already set this up on my machine. Okay, what this allows Dreamweaver to do is to talk to the ColdFusion server to find out information about your database, to run remote code, to check things inside Dreamweaver's design view. So you need to make sure that RDS is enabled to use Dreamweaver well with ColdFusion. So the next thing we need to do is set up our testing server. Now the testing server in your site basically tells Dreamweaver, here's where my ColdFusion server is, and here's how you get to it. So inside Dreamweaver, if we choose Manage Sites, and I click Edit, I have a testing server category. And I have my server model selected as ColdFusion, and I'm on my local machine. If you were FTPing into another machine, you would choose FTP. And then I tell it where my testing server files are. In this case, they're the same as my local files because of the way I have my machine set up. If you were using ColdFusion's built-in web server, this would be cfusion mx7 www is where you would store all of your files. Okay? And then you give it a URL prefix, which says this is where you would look in the browser to find my site. Okay? So we've got all that set up. I'll click OK. And done. And then we need to create a data source name variable. What this allows you to do is to create one single variable in your entire application that says this is my data source. So we're going to set up one called request.dsn. And request.dsn contains Web Design World San Fran 2006. So anytime I create a query inside Dreamweaver, it's going to use that variable instead of the actual name of my data source. Now, what does that do for me? That means that if I'm developing on my local machine and I name my data source Bob, and I'm working on it for 3 weeks and I got it all set up, and I have CF query data source equals Bob scattered throughout my entire application. Then I go to put it on Crystal Text Server and they say, oh, you can't use Bob, you have to use Bill because Bob's already taken. Well, then you need to go through and replace that data source in your entire application to switch it out. If you use a single variable stored in a single location, like your application.cfm or CFC file, then you can change it in one spot, and it changes throughout your entire application just like that. So here, I'm setting up a request.dsn variable. So it says cfset request.dsn equals Web Design World San Fran 2006. And I'm going to save this file. Now, application.cfc, I'm not going to get too deep into, but application.cfc in ColdFusion MX7 is run before any other, actually it's run with each page request. So if I say, give me index.cfm, it runs application.cfc first, and then it runs index.cfm. And I say, okay, now give me categories.cfm. It runs application.cfc first, and then runs categories.cfm. So you can put this kind of global variable in your application.cfc or CFM file and have it available on every single page in your entire site. Okay, now that I have that data source set up, I need to tell Dreamweaver about it. So in my bindings panel here, I can click the plus icon. And I'm going to go over these real quick here for you. If you can't use the little plus icon, there's stuff grayed out here. Make sure that you have a check mark next to everything except for the last one. The last one says create a record set to start working. The rest say set up your testing server, specify your RDS login, so you're going to type in your RDS password, and this hooks Dreamweaver into your RDS. Now, if you click the RDS login link and you get an error that says the ColdFusion server is not running or Dreamweaver can't find your ColdFusion server, send me an email, and I'll give you my email address at the end. In my Boston presentation, my ColdFusion server was set up incorrectly. And I only got through about 20 minutes of my presentation before I just had to call it quits because ColdFusion wasn't working, the RDS wasn't working. And it's because of a misconfiguration in the ColdFusion server, and I can tell you how to fix it to save you the same headaches that I had on stage back in November. So, again, click RDS login. If you get any kind of errors, shoot me an email and I'll get you hooked up. Okay? So, back to this, we're going to create our data source name variable. So I click the plus icon, choose data source name variable, and I'm going to give it a name, and it's just going to happen to match the one here in my application.cfc, it's request.dsn. And then if I click this, it's going to list not every data source yet. Okay, we're going to click cancel. Let me show you real quick what happened here before I get ahead of myself. Whoops. Got bad aim. There we go, data source name variable. It's not listing that new Web Design World San Fran 2006 data source that I just created. So what I need to do is, basically Dreamweaver is caching the database names to save it some time. It doesn't have to go back to the server every time if it caches some of that information. So I'll click cancel and click on databases and just click the refresh button here. We should see this list change. There we go. Because I deleted my CF nuke data source, and this is the one that we added. And I can actually, in my databases panel here, see all of my tables, see all the fields in those tables, see their data types, and get all kinds of useful information out of this databases panel. Okay? So now that Dreamweaver knows about my new data source, I go back to the bindings, click plus, choose data source name variable, and again, we'll do request.dsn, and choose San Fran 2006, click OK, and here I have my request.dsn. Okay, so now I'm finally, after all these years, ready to start working inside Dreamweaver. So, what do we do first? Well, we could start building the front end of the site first and start displaying our posts and whatnot, but we don't have any information in the database. And as a general rule, your admin is going to be multiple times larger than the front end of your site. The front end of my blog has 1 page or 2? Let's see, because I don't remember. Yeah, the front end of my blog only has 1 page, index.cfm. That's not going to take me any time at all to build. My admin, however, has 3, 6, 9, 10, at least 11 files. So your admin is always going to be larger than the front end of your site. So building your admin first allows you to basically work out all the little issues with your data as you go. You know, you start building the admin and you add the employee record, and then you show your client, okay, here's where you enter the employee record, and they go, oh, we forgot. We need their mother's daughter's maiden name in the database. Well, then you can go and add that in your admin, adjust accordingly, before you've gone through adjusting the whole front end of the site to suit that data. Okay? So you're going to build your admin first, because that's going to be the most work. And you're going to see the quickest payoff that way. Okay? So, admin requirements. We're going to need a secure login, which we'll build if we have time. I don't know that we will. We're going to build an author, view, add, and edit page, or rather 3 separate pages. And we're going to build the blog post, view, add, and edit pages. So you're going to have a list all your authors. You're going to click on them and be able to edit them. And you're going to have a page that you can add a new author. Okay? And we're going to hit most of Dreamweaver's server behaviors just building these 6 or 7 pages. Okay? So, how do you decide what to build first? I build them in the order that I'm going to use them. So if we remember my database diagram, I had the posts in the middle, and I had authors and categories. What do I need to flesh out my posts? I need to know about authors before I can assign a post to an author. I need to know about categories before I can assign a post to a category. So we're going to build our author and category pages first. So I can add an author to the database, and I can add a category to the database. Okay? Then once that's done, I can build the post page, and we can start adding posts. So how to build a listing page. First, you open the file, and then we're going to add a record set. So anytime you're trying to display information to the user, you need a record set first. A record set is a group of records from the database. Okay? Then we're going to add a dynamic table, which Dreamweaver does like that for us. It displays all our records. And then we're going to clean it up a little bit because Dreamweaver doesn't make the best dynamic table in the world. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that. And we are going to be using some SQL, which is structured query language, which is what you use to get information out of a database. But I'm not going to go over the specifics of it because that's a whole 60-minute session all on its own covering SQL. We're going to point and click as much as possible. Okay? So what I have done for you is in the admin directory, I've created placeholder pages for everything already. So I have an admin folder with an authors directory, and we have our add, edit, and index pages. I think you can all guess what those are for. Okay? So we're going to first open our index page, which already has my fancy, wonderful design wrapped around it. And we're going to create a record set. So in the bindings panel, I'm going to click my plus icon and choose record set query. And by default, yours will open in simple mode, which is what we're going to work in most of the time if we can. Okay? So the first thing I need to do is give my record set a name, which is going to be RS authors. So RS for record set, authors for what that record set contains. Keep it nice and simple. Okay, then for my data source, you'll notice I have Web Design World San Fran 2006 here. But I created this as my data source name variable. So this right here is the one I want to choose, request.dsn. Okay, now Dreamweaver's going to think a little bit. It's going to go out to the ColdFusion server through RDS and say, okay, tell me about all the tables that are in that database. And here's my tables list, authors, categories, and posts. So we're building an authors list, so we'll click authors. And then what do I need to know about authors? I need to know about their ID and their name. Now I could leave all selected. As a general rule, when you are developing, never select more information from the database than you absolutely need. For instance, if I'm showing the posts and I only need to write a link to them, do I really need to ask the database for all the content for that post? Never ask for more information than you need because the database has to get that for you, send it to you. It takes time and processing power. So always choose selected here and pick what you need. Don't just do all and take it all and play with it. Okay? Now we're going to sort this by author name. And I'm going to click test. And I get no data because I have no authors in my database. Okay? So we'll click OK. Click OK again. And we'll notice here in my record set, in my bindings panel, I can see my record set and I can see all the fields that are in that record set. If I look here in code view, you can see that Dreamweaver has written this nice little CF query tag for me with my data source name variable. Can everybody see that code or is it too small? Too small? Oh, I'm already on the right page. How lucky is that? How's that? Better? Okay. So Dreamweaver has written a little CF query for me, and it's written some SQL. Select author ID, author name from the authors table, and order it by the author name ascending. Okay, so this is the work that Dreamweaver is doing for you. Let me get rid of my wireless here. There we go. So we'll switch back to design view. And now we're going to insert a dynamic table. So I'm going to choose Insert, Application Objects, Dynamic Data, Dynamic Table. Buried way, way down deep in there. If I go up to here, I can choose Application. And I've got a dynamic table right there. A little easier to find. And that's in the Application category of the insert bar. So we'll choose Dynamic Table. I say, okay, I'm going to use the RS authors record set, and I want to display all records, not just the first 10. And if I had more record sets, I'd be able to see them all in here. So we'll click OK. And here we have a nifty little dynamic table. It created an author ID column, and it created an author name column. So we'll just change these to ID, and that one to name. And to spruce things up, we'll make that a header. And there we go. Now my table looks a little bit nicer. Author ID and author name are kind of goofy looking titles. So there's that. Now I'm going to press F12 and just preview this in the browser. If I had the right site running. There we go. And I have absolutely nothing. Because again, there are no authors in the database, right? So we go back to Dreamweaver. And I'm going to select this table. And in my server behaviors panel, which is right here, I'm going to click plus and choose Show Region if record set is not empty. So if I actually have some information in my record set, display this table. So we'll choose that, and I'm going to check against the RS authors record set. Click OK. And you'll notice this little CF if wrapped around there. Again, if I switch to code view, we can see this is everything that Dreamweaver has written for me. If the record count is greater than 0, then display this table. Okay, now I'm going to make this a little more user-friendly. Say there are no authors in the database. And then I'm going to show that one, show region, if record set is empty. RS authors, click OK. I'll save my file, and we'll just refresh it here in the browser. And now it says there's no authors in the database. Nice and simple. Okay. Now let's finally add a new author. So I'm going to click Add New Author, and I'm on my add.cfm page, which hasn't got anything on it at this point. And we're going to use another server behavior. And I'm going to make this thing stop annoying me. There we go. Okay. So we're going to use the Insert Record Form Wizard. Let me make sure I got the name of that right. Record Insertion Form Wizard. Again, that's on the application category of the insert bar. It's also buried deep down in this application objects section. Insert record, record insertion form wizard. Okay? Now, notice there's two here. There's a record insertion form wizard and there's an insert record. The form wizard will actually build the whole form for you. If you already have a form built, then you just use the insert record and you can hook it into your already existing form. I like using the form wizard because I'm lazy. Okay? So we'll choose our data source. We're going to choose the table that we want to insert information into, which is our authors table. And then I'm going to choose where I want to go after I'm finished inserting. In this case, we're going to go back to the admin authors index.cfm. Okay? And then I can choose whether I want to pass the original query string. In this case, I don't. There may be some instances where you do. Just take those on a case-by-case basis. And down here in the form fields, you get to choose what your form is going to look like. In this case, my ID, remember I said that the author ID is a unique value. Well, if it's a unique value, you don't want people to type it in, right? Because if you're adding authors, you might put in ID number 12, and he's adding an author, and he says, oh, I like that number 12, so I'll add an author with that. This needs to be handled by the application somehow, not by a user. You can either set that up as a auto number field in Access or an identity field in SQL Server or MySQL. In this case, we're using ColdFusion to generate our IDs. So I'm going to make this a hidden field, and I'm going to say create UUID, which basically creates a unique ID. Okay? And then I have my author name, and we're just going to clean up the label here. It's an author name. It's a text field. It's not going to have any default value. And then we click OK. And there's my form. And I always have to clean it up a little bit because I'm picky. It centers the table, which I don't like. And it doesn't add a header over here, which I prefer. And then let's look at the code and just make sure that it did everything right. So see, here's my hidden form field, but it's not inside a CF output tag. So whenever you're doing any kind of ColdFusion function, you need to have a CF output tag around it so ColdFusion knows, okay, I'm supposed to look at this and do something with it. So Dreamweaver didn't add that for me. I would have had to type it in the dialog. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then we'll see that it's created my author name field. And if I scroll up here to the top, you can see it's written an insert statement for you into your request.dsn data source. And after it's run this insert, which is this whole CF query tag, then it redirects to the index page. Okay? So we're going to save this. I'm going to go back to my browser and refresh. And we're going to add Dan Short. Insert record. So there I am. We're going to add a new author. We'll add Angela. We'll add another new author. We'll add Joe. And there we go. Now I know my database is working correctly. And these are those big, long IDs that Dreamweaver created for us. We don't really want to look at these on the page, I wouldn't think. They're meaningless to a human. They make tons of sense to the database. So what we're going to do is go back to our index page, and I'm just going to get rid of this field altogether because I don't need this column anymore. So now, if I look at my page, I just have my author names. But they're not clickable, so I can't edit them at all, obviously. So I need to create a link here. And all I have to do is select my author name. And I'm just going to create a link like any other. I'm going to link to my author's edit page. Except down here, I'm going to click the parameters button. And the parameters button allows me to add information that's going to be tacked onto the query string in the browser. So I'm going to pass an ID. And that ID is going to, if you notice I click this little lightning bolt icon here, that's going to open up, if I can aim, there we go, my dynamic data dialog, which will let me choose the author ID from my record set. Okay, so I click OK, click OK, click OK, call the doctor about carpal tunnel, and you can see here I have an ID equals my author ID. Dreamweaver took care of all that for me. All right, we can also see in Design View that it's updated and shows it as a link. So if I want to double check things, I can click Live Data View directly here inside Design View. And it shows me that everything is working right. Anything that's yellow here means that you can't touch it. You can't, Dreamweaver has processed this on the remote server. You can still touch this first link and change it. So if I wanted to, let's see. I wanted to add something here. I can change it and click refresh, and then it will update all my other records. So you can actually work with your dynamic data directly inside Dreamweaver's Design View. So we're going to get rid of that and turn off live data. Save my document and refresh. And now we have links. And if you look really closely down there in the status bar, you can see that that ID changes for each person. Now when I click these, you'll notice up here it says ID equals, and it has my nice long 35-digit ID. Okay? Now on the Edit Author page, I need to do a few things. I need to create a record set first, because now I'm going to be displaying information that's already in the database. So I'm going to create a record set to grab my author information. Then I'm going to build a form to match all my databases, pretty it up, write some SQL, add a delete button, add some conditional logic, blah, 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 blah. Or I'll create a record set, use the record update form wizard, add a delete button, and then add the delete record server behavior. So using the server behaviors, I can go from all of that to just a few steps. Okay? This just looks like as much because it's bigger text. It really is easier. Okay? So we're going to go to our edit page. And what's the first thing we need to do? Create a record set. But I'm kind of a lazy developer. So what I can do is actually go to index.cfm, and I can right-click on my record set and choose Copy. Go to my edit page, right-click, and choose Paste. And I can copy and paste record sets back and forth. This record set isn't quite what I want, though, because I want a single author. This one returns all authors. So I'll double-click. I'm going to change the name to be a bit more appropriate. Just remove the S. And I'm going to say filter where author ID equals the URL parameter ID. That's the one I used for the link I created on the listing page, correct? So that's what I need to filter by. So click test, and it's going to ask me for an ID. Now to check and make sure this is working right, I'll just go over here, and I'll copy this one, and paste it in there, and click OK. Oh, it's going to make a fool out of me. It shouldn't be, but we'll test it in the browser just to be sure. Oh, I missed some? Let's try that. Oh, you're right, the input is limited. Damn those Dreamweaver developers. I'm going to have a conversation with somebody. Okay, so click OK. And then because I changed the name of the record set, it's going to warn me. It says, you renamed this. Should we do a find and replace for you to make sure that you catch all the instances where that might have been changed? So we're going to click OK. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit replace all. And it didn't find anything, so I'm good to go. Anytime you change a record set up there, it'll ask you, you need to take care of this and make sure that you caught all the instances. All right, so now we need an update record, which happens to just be right here, record update form wizard. I'm going to choose my data source, which is request.dsn. I'm going to choose the table I want to update, which is authors. The record is going to come from my RS author record set. And this is the unique column in my database that is related to that particular author. And then after updating, we're going to go back to our index.cfm file. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did on the add page here. What fields do I need? I don't need the author ID field. They shouldn't be editing that. It's unique. So I'm just going to remove it. Click the minus button to take care of that one. Okay, so now we want author name. And you'll notice down here it already has CF output, rs author dot author name. So it's going to put that author's name in there for me, so I don't have to worry about it. Click OK. And we'll pretty up our table because I'm picky. And we'll go back here and refresh. And there's Angela. If I go back to my listing and click on Dan, it should say Dan. Now we'll change that to Daniel Short. And it changed here. We'll go ahead and update all these. And there we go. We have all of our authors updating. So now we've created our listing, add, and edit pages for our authors. I've already done that for the categories page for you. So that means that next, oh wait, I missed something. We need to delete. So when you do eventually end up with that employee that gets fired and you have to delete their record from the database, we're going to use the delete record server behavior. Now, the ColdFusion version of this one is a little bit different than all the other versions. So if you're using ASP or PHP or anything like that, this dialog will differ quite a bit. But what we're going to do is say, we're going to delete our primary key value. So we're going to check to see whether a particular form button has been clicked. So if I click the delete button, then delete this record from the database. And my data source is going to be called request.dsn. and I'm going to delete from the authors table, the author ID, and my primary key is going to come from the URL parameter ID. Okay? And then after I delete, I'm going to send them back to the index page once again. So if they click the delete button, then check the URL parameter for the ID and delete that record from the database. Okay? So click OK. And now I need to actually correct that form button. So, no label tag. This one's going to be called delete. And we'll save. So, sorry, Joe, but I'm going to have to delete your record. And nothing happened. It didn't delete it. The reason it didn't delete it is because of the order that I applied these to the page. I applied the update first, and then I applied the delete. So when I click the button, the update fires. And what did I say in my update record server behavior? After you're done updating, redirect them to the index page. So it redirects them, and the delete server behavior never fires. So what I need to do is in CodeView, I'm going to click delete record here in my server behaviors panel, and it shows me exactly where that delete code is. If I click update, I can see where the update code is. So I obviously need to move the delete above the update. So I'm going to take this, just drag it up there. And now you can see that the order has changed here in the server behaviors panel. The delete is listed first, and then the update. All right, so I'll save my document. Now I'm going to get rid of Joe. Oh, what did I do? Let me check my code here real quick. Oh, the problem is that my ID isn't getting passed back to the page. In my delete record server behavior, I told it to get the URL parameter ID in order to delete that record. What I actually need is the form variable, which is named author ID. And I'll show you where that is. If we scroll down here, you see this hidden form field right here named author ID. This actually has my author ID inside it. So that's why my delete wasn't working. I was checking for the wrong information to grab the user's ID. So let's try this again. Click delete. There he goes. Now let's make sure my edit still works. Test, 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 update. There, my edit still works. I didn't get accidentally deleted. So now we're done with the authors. The categories are already finished. So I'm going to add a new category. We'll just call this one training. And there's my category. Okay? And now we need to add some posts. So the author and category pages were easy. You just create a single table. It's not relying on any other tables. You don't have to pull in any information from anywhere else in order to get it to work. Authors stand all on their own. Categories stand all on their own. Blog posts, I need to know about the authors. I need to know about the categories. So we're going to build our index page just like the others, but we're going to actually pull in some information from the other tables after when we build our add and edit pages. So let's build a listing page real quick. And I know that I'm going to be going over this stuff really fast, but you've already seen this once, and I already gave you an open invitation to harass me. So we're going to create a record set. And RS posts, and we'll pull it from our data source. We have about 15 minutes, so I'm going to get through this fairly fast. We're going to need our ID, our heading, and our date. And that's all I want to know. Actually, I want to know about whether the post is approved or not as well. I want all this showing on my listing page. Okay? And then we're going to sort these by their date, descending. So I'll see the most recent post first, and then all the older ones after it. So we'll click OK. And we'll insert our dynamic table. RS posts, I'm going to show all records. Click OK. And it stuck my table way down here for some reason. So we'll pick it up and move it over there. Make those headers. We'll get rid of my post ID column. And we'll make this heading link to my edit page. So again, we'll click the little link icon here in the property inspector. We're going to go to posts, edit.cfm, and I'm going to pass it the ID of the post. So rsposts.post ID. Click OK, 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 and we're done with our listing page. That fast. So this means that you can still bill your client by the hour, but they don't need to know it only took you 5 minutes. Okay? So we go to our post page, and again, I don't see any records because I don't have any posts in the database yet. All right? So we'll click Add New Post, and we're going to do essentially the same thing, but as I said, we need to know what? We need to know about our authors, we need to know about our categories. So I'm going to open my post edit or add page. There we go. And again, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to my authors listing page, and I'm going to grab my RS authors record set, and I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to go to my categories index page, and I'm going to grab all my categories, and I'm going to post it in here. And now I know about all the authors and categories in my database for the purpose of adding a new post. Okay? So now we'll choose the record insertion form wizard. And we're going to do something a little bit different when we get down to our form fields. So I'm going to add into the posts table, and afterwards redirect back to the posts index file. And we're going to go through the same steps as before. Post ID, I don't want the author entering that, so that's going to be a hidden field. And this time I'm going to do it right. CF output, create UUID. My heading is simply going to be a text field. My date, I'm going to make that a text field, but I'm going to pre-fill that for the user. I'm going to say CF output now. And that's a ColdFusion function that's going to give you the current date and time. And actually, why don't I just make that hidden, because my boss can never remember how to enter dates correctly. Author ID. So if I'm adding a post, I don't want to have to remember my author ID or Angela's author ID if I want to list her as the author. So I'm going to choose here to make this a menu. I click Menu Properties, and then I'm going to pull this from the database. The labels will be the author name from the RS authors record set. The values will be the author ID. Okay, and then I can select one by default if I want to. I don't want to do that right now, so I'm just going to click OK. You'll notice this listed as a menu. So we're just going to say post author, not author ID. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the categories. I'll make it a menu. Click Menu Properties from the database. Choose the categories record set instead this time. The labels are the name, the values are the ID. Okay, the labels are what people are going to see. The ID is what's going to go in the database, or the value rather. So click OK. And then let's see, our content, that should actually be a text area. So they have plenty of room to type. And then we have our checkbox. And checkboxes are a little bit goofy because different databases require different input. Some databases say -1 and 0 are true and false. Access likes to use the words yes and no. SQL Server uses 1 and 0. So choose the appropriate database here. Until you get a little bit further into writing your own ColdFusion, then you can write code that doesn't really care what kind of database it's writing it to. But we're going to leave it like that for now. Okay? So by default, it's not going to be approved. Clean up my titles a little bit here. There we go. Now everything looks nice and neat. Click OK. I'm sorry? Well, it depends on what you want the user to be able to do. You know, you can set up access levels where you can say, if you're an administrator, show this button. If you're just an editor, then we don't want them to see that or be able to affect it. Okay, so here, you see I have a dynamic list/menu over here for my authors and my categories. So I'll save this page, refresh, and I have fancy little menus that list all of my authors. If I add a new category, and we're going to talk about my favorite subject, rum. We go to our posts, add new post, and there we go. Now I have rum and training. So this immediately updates based off of what's in the database. All right, so I'll add a new post. This post is about training. Okay, we'll say this one's approved and click Insert. Oh, and I have a problem. It doesn't like my date format. Dates are another thing that's always a problem with databases. SQL Server wants it in one format, MySQL wants it in another, Access wants it in another. We can fix that using what's called the CF query param tag, which Dreamweaver will not write for you, but I'm going to show you how to use. So I'll go down here, and this is where it's inserting our post date. So we have form.postDate. What you can do is use the CF query param tag, and it has a CF SQL type attribute. And we're going to say that I'm inserting a date, and its value is form.postDate. I'll make this a little bit wider here for you. Okay. What this does is it tells ColdFusion, if I'm inserting into Access, use this date format. If I'm inserting into MySQL, use this date format. If I'm inserting into SQL Server, use this date format. So ColdFusion will do the heavy lifting here for you and feed the database the right date format so that you don't have to think about it, because you shouldn't have to think about that kind of stuff. Let the application server take care of it for you. Okay? So the CF query param tag is your friend. All right? And you just specify the type here, and it takes care of all the rest. So let's refresh my page and see if it inserts now. There we go. 2006-01-31. Shows you how servers think about dates. Okay? So go ahead and add another one. This post is about rum. Okay? And there's my post about rum. So now I know my posts are working correctly. Cool? Now we need to build an edit page. The edit page is going to be essentially the same. So we'll go here, and we're going to open our post edit page. And again, I need to know the same things I needed to know before. I need to know about authors, so I'm going to copy and paste that record set. I need to know about categories, so I'm going to copy and paste that record set. But I also need to know about posts. So I'm going to create a new record set, call it RS Post, choose my data source, choose my table, and I'll pick all my fields here. And I need to filter it once again where the post ID equals the URL parameter ID. If we go back to our browser, we can see we're passing that post ID right here through the query string. Okay? So we'll click OK. And now we need to run our update form wizard. Looks almost exactly like the insert one, and we're going to do just one tiny little thing different. We're going to update our posts. And we're going to select the record from RS Post. Notice here I have to choose the record set because I have more than one on the page. I don't want to update the post table with the author's record set, right? So we'll choose Post. I have my post ID as my unique column. And then we're going to redirect to index.cfm. And then we'll do the same things we did before. We'll get rid of the post ID. We're going to display the date as text. We're not going to let them edit it. We're going to let them, but we will display it. And we'll shuffle that up on the page. We'll move it to the top. And then we want to show our heading. We want to show the author. And again, this is going to be a menu. Menu properties from the database. RS authors, our labels will be the author name. Our value will be author ID. And notice it says select value equal to RS post.postAuthorID. It already knows what that should be selected by default. So my select menu has Angela and Dan listed in it. Dan is going to be selected by default, and I can change that to update the record. Okay, we're going to do the same for categories. And I'm going to forgo some of the cleanup just in the essence of time. And then our content will be a text area. And then the post approved is a checkbox. And we're going to check if post approved is equal to true. And we'll submit that as an access checkbox. Now when I click OK, I'm going to have a problem with my checkbox. Dreamweaver has a bug in it when you use the update record server behavior here. Where did it go? It writes some bad code here. It says ampersand, ampersand checked. Or @ symbol, rather. That's actually pulling some information from the server behavior that shouldn't be there. So to fix that, all you have to do is double-click on the dynamic checkbox here and click OK. And it gets rid of those @ symbols. So if you were in Angela's presentation prior, you saw that you can go to macromedia.com/go/wish, and you can report bugs and feature requests to Macromedia. If this bugs you as much as it bugs me, go to macromedia.com/go/wish and tell them to get that fixed. Okay? So I fixed that problem. We're going to save our page and see if our update or edit works. See, that should have chosen Dan, huh? Because I wrote that post. Did I? Oh, don't tell me that. I'm going insane. Let's click update. Okay, we have the same problem we had with the post dates, right? ColdFusion is sending it in the wrong format. So we'll go back up here, update record. Find my post date. Where are you? There we go. And we're going to add a little... Actually, we're not editing the post date, are we? We're just displaying it as a text field, right? So I don't need that in here at all. Why don't I just get rid of that? Why update information in the database that isn't changing, right? So we'll save that. Now let's run it. There we go. There we go. Now that lists Dan as the author. So I wasn't going insane. Joe was on top of things. Okay? So now we have our admin built. We pass it off to our client, let them bang on it for a week, add in content, add posts all over the place. Now we need to build our post listing page, or rather our blog homepage. So we're on our blog homepage, and I already have all my placeholders here. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new record set. It's called RS Posts. I'll pull it from my request.dsn. Click Posts. And I want just the heading, the date. On the author ID and the category won't do me much good because they don't mean anything to people. They're just, goofy long IDs. So I'm going to have to change this a little bit. So I'm going to go and finish. We want content, and then we want to say where post approved is equal to an entered value of 1. So I only want posts where they're actually approved. So we'll click Test. And that's working, but I still need to get the author name and the category name. And I do that by going to the Advanced Builder. So the Advanced Record Set Builder allows you to type in your own SQL. So I actually have this in here. I cheated a little bit. And what we're going to do, it won't let me copy and paste from there, so I'm going to have to do it manually. Okay, so we're going to join our two tables. We're going to join the post table and the authors table. We're going to say this post belongs to this author in this category. All right, down here in the database items section, I can expand my tables, and I can say where posts, author ID. I'm going to click the where button. Notice it added an and in here for me. Equals authors, author ID. And it's going to make a liar out of me. There, I type faster. Okay, so now we have our criteria in there. But I also need to request the author name, right? So I'm going to choose author name and choose select. And then it stuck the author name up there. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for the categories. We want the category name. Click select. Where the post category ID, and added another and statement for me there. It's so helpful. Equals the category ID here. And that time it did it right. I think it's because I hadn't actually clicked select, so it didn't know I really wanted anything from that table yet. I'll click test, and there we go. We can see Dan Short, training, and rum. It's pulled in the right information. So we'll click OK, and then I'm going to get these displaying on the front, and then we'll be all done. So we're going to do insert. Actually, we're not going to do insert. We're going to do everything by hand this time. The bindings panel allows you to just simply click and drag stuff out of the bindings panel onto your design view. So post heading. I want to display my post heading, so I just take it and plop it right on there. The date, I want my date. And I don't like the way it's displayed, so I'm going to choose some formatting. And then it was written by Dan, and it's in this category. And oh, by the way, here's what it's all about. And then I'm going to delete this one, highlight all this information, and in my server behaviors panel, I'm going to apply a repeat region. So I'll choose all records, click OK, save, and we'll go to my blog homepage. And there's my 2 posts. Okay? So now you can see in a matter of an hour, I went over not only the framework of how to go about building your site, but I built almost an entire little mini blogging solution for you. Now, I'm going to have all these files available for you after the conference. They'll be at buildyourownblog.com/WDW San Fran 2006. So I'll have a page up there. The PowerPoint slides are obviously in your booklet, and I'll have the finished files and the start files for you so you can build your own blog. And if you have any questions, get it up there. See, I did have more stuff to cover. There you go. Dan@site-drive.com. Please do feel free to email me. I will be right outside the room if you have questions. Went over a lot of stuff really fast. But I can guarantee you this will greatly speed up your development time once you get familiar with Dreamweaver's server behaviors and the whole interface. So thank you very much. Oh, and if you'd like, if you come ask me a question, I have lots of free stuff up here that I'm willing to give away because I don't want to have to take it home. So,
Free stuff.
there you go.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel Short. Still wish it stood for bring your own beer, but in my world it does. We are going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 11:30 for customizing Dreamweaver over here and XML and syndication next door.